Hey, all, Wes Blankenship and Jake Rowe here for DawgsHQ. And Jake, with Texas and Oklahoma joining the SEC, a lot of chatter, scuttlebutt around what the Dogs' future schedules could look like. And I, for one, am excited to see those two brand names join the conference and get in the mix with Georgia playing them. But we've also seen, Texas A&M has been supposedly on Georgia's SEC schedule for a while, and the Dogs still haven't made it to College Station. So how are you wrapping your mind around what the addition of the Longhorns and the Sooners could mean and look like in these potentially new scheduling formats and divisions, if you even want to call them those?
Changes are coming. I mean, that's just all there is to it. And I think they're going to a 9-game schedule. Like, I would bet everything I have on that. It just works. Whether you're talking about a 3-6 format, which is 3 regular opponents, or 3 yearly opponents and 6 rotational, or whether you're talking about like a 3-3-3, where you have, you do a pod system where you play 3 teams from your own pod, your own 4-man pod. You pay, 1 from each of the other pods, and then you rotate amongst the other schools. Either way, I don't know when Georgia and Texas A&M are going to play in College Station, but I do know it would be hilarious if they pushed it all the way to the back end as far as it could possibly go, which is only 2 or 3 years after Texas and Oklahoma join the league. It would be funny, but I'm ready for a trip to College Station. I want to see that, but I'm super excited about this. I'm super excited more than just adding, if Georgia would have just added, let's say, 2 other teams, North Carolina and Wake Forest, for example, I wouldn't be this excited, but I would still be very excited about a 9-game schedule, because I think that's good for the fans. And there's another ramification here that we're not talking about. I'm not going to get into it yet, but it involves the Florida game, and you know where that's going. But ultimately, I mean, listen, we've seen Georgia play both of these teams, Wes, in the past 5, 6 years, 7 years, 6 years, 7 years. And I tell you what, man, both great fan bases, a lot of passion. It's going to be a lot of fun when they join the conference, for sure.
So what do we look at as the team that could be on the chopping block? And I know there are predictions out there about the 3 locked-in opponents. You mentioned the Florida game and what could happen to that. But I am seeing Auburn, Florida, and South Carolina as the guaranteed conference opponents for Georgia each year. And we spoke about this this time last year, maybe a little bit later in the year. But it didn't seem right, didn't sit well with me at the time that Tennessee would be off the schedule, and it still doesn't. But I understand that South Carolina views Georgia as a rival, and there are a lot of puzzle pieces that need to fit into place, a lot of dominoes that could fall depending on what those 3 teams are. So how do you ultimately look at which teams Georgia should be and or could be playing every single season?
I think Georgia fans should feel very fortunate right now, right? Because there are only 2 teams, there are only 2 rivalries there where you want to put your arms around them and not let them go. And those are the 2 you mentioned, Florida and Auburn. I don't like losing Tennessee either. I also don't like losing. Kentucky. And I know that's not a big rivalry game, but that's developed into hey, let's watch some football, old man, grown man football in October, November every year. That's been a lot of fun for me. I like that style of football. I mean, you can tell there are bloody noses and sore bodies when those 2 teams play. And I know things are going to change. I mean, Kentucky could be Hal Mummy offense again at some point down the road. But right now it's a lot of fun. And, but I do believe Georgia fans are very fortunate that the 2 rivalries that you really have to hold on to, and that almost all Georgia fans are going to want to hold on to, are probably going to get continued, and that's Auburn and Florida, which I think have to. I mean, those are. But if you're looking at so if you're an Alabama fan, you got Auburn, Tennessee, and LSU. I doubt you're going to be able to keep all 3 of those, and that sucks. That absolutely sucks.
Yeah, it's kind of a function of, for Georgia anyway, we talk about the regional rivals that so many people in the state have, because Georgia is surrounded by SEC opponents to the north, south, east, and west. But you got to keep the Deep South's oldest rivalry, and you got to keep the cocktail party. You alluded to it earlier. What are the ramifications of this expanded schedule and what it could mean for that neutral site game in Jacksonville?
I go back to those gifts that were sitting there waiting on us, Wes, in the press box in Jacksonville. They know it. We know it. The Georgia-Florida game, unless somebody pulls a rabbit out of a hat, is going to go to a home and home. And that's bittersweet for me, because I've learned to enjoy Jacksonville, as hard as that can be, as a grown human being. Like, I understand the student appeal to it. Frat Beach, and you've talked about some of your Florida stories. I've talked about some of my Florida stories. I mean, we put like 20 people in a suite one time that we got upgraded to. We just started inviting people. Let's fill this thing up, we said. But ultimately, man, that's going to a home and home, I think. I think we're going to see the Gators playing in Sanford Stadium. What is that? What am I looking at there? Is that a Photoshop? That's got to be that's Photoshop.
What?
Oh, my bad. That looked like Sanford Stadium there for a minute. My bad.
No.
It wasn't until I saw the standards up there, the light
the
standards, that I realized that wasn't Sanford Stadium. And plus, I saw Georgia in the red uniform. It just had me thinking that was Sanford for a minute.
The end zone looks like it. Yeah.
Oh, man, what a mistake. So I thought that somebody had just thrown a Florida.
You're just ready to go, man. You're already looking in the future.
Yeah, well, but at the same time, I mean, come on. I'm not in any hurry to go to the Swamp. Per se, even though it's one of the few places in the SEC I've never visited. Arkansas is another. I do think, man, that and College Station's another too. I do think that Florida, Florida, in Sanford Stadium, after what we saw this past year with Tennessee, get those two teams ranked highly, top 5 maybe. Man, that's going to be crazy. And I'm sure it'll be the same thing for Florida fans. I think there's a lot, there should be some things that folks are excited about that. And I know my people down in South Georgia, man, Stetson Bennett's people down in South Georgia, some of them are going to be really disappointed.
Yeah. That was their Super Bowl.
Yeah. But let's be honest. There's not a ton of folks down there. I mean, there's just not there's not as many people as you think there, especially it doesn't match up with the land. But there's a lot of swampland down there, and I'm going to feel bad for people like Paul Daniels, Paul Daniel, my high school principal, who is in love with this rivalry. Shout out to PD, he's on our board over at DawgsHQ, and other people, guys like John DuPont, who calls Pierce County games, I believe, down in Blackshear. I've run into him before on the way home from that game, and there's a lot of history in that, but I think it's probably, almost certainly going to become a home and home when this all happens, because you're going to have an odd scheduling format, and you want to be able to take advantage of every single home game you've got, when every other year you're going to have more away games than home games.
Do you think that means that Texas and Oklahoma will also go to a home and home?
Probably.
Man, that's just hard to wrap your mind around as a college football fan.
I tell you what, Wes, the way you said that, and you may have just cast a spell on me. You may have just hit me with some voice inflection, but it was something about the way you said that my meter on believing Georgia, Florida was going home and home kind of shifted down to maybe 70% instead of 95%.
Yeah. I mean, people view the Iron Bowl in Texas, Oklahoma as rivalries on their own tiers above Georgia, Florida. And maybe that's fair for the Iron Bowl. I don't know if Texas, Oklahoma is more intense than Georgia, Florida, at least on the football side, like for a game day. Jacksonville gets pretty nuts. But yeah, it made me wonder, is that a sacred cow? Can they not get rid of that one? And if you're in talks to, keep that one, then I know Jacksonville will probably have their ear on the door listening to how those conversations go.
Well, the one thing I'm really interested in, and I've talked with Seth Emerson about this at The Athletic, is so the city of Jacksonville makes a lot of money off this game. What's going to happen? What happens for Kirby Smart and the power brokers at Georgia if the city of Jacksonville just comes over the top? They're just like, all right, listen, all right, guys, we're paying you whatever it is right now, $2-3 million for coming. How about we give you 15? I mean,
we're selling the Jags.
Yeah, can you say no? I mean, because I mean, apparently, I think the economic impact has been, I've seen numbers thrown around. I think it's 25, 30, 40 million that the city of Jacksonville makes over the course of that weekend. What if they come over the top with a 10, 12, $15 million offer and they decide to take their profit, right? To take what they normally make, but maybe they don't get the margin that they're used to, and they just flood the cash into Georgia and Florida just to kind of keep it going. I don't know how those programs say no.
What do you think about the short-term timeline of Georgia, South Carolina? Let's look down the road a couple of years. Where do you think Shane Beamer has the Gamecocks in a couple seasons? I think we feel pretty confident that Georgia should still be a playoff contender. Certainly in the expanded playoff model, Georgia should be a playoff contender every year. I think we both agree on that.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you think about the competitive floor, I guess, of Florida and Auburn and South Carolina? Because as you look at these three programs right now, traditionally this isn't the case, but South Carolina is the hottest one at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, I still think South Carolina is going to play whack-a-mole more often than not. They're going to consistently be chasing different issues. This past year, it was offense. They were good on defense. They couldn't score very much. I think it's really tough to build a complete, consistent roster at South Carolina because in the days of the transfer portal, people are going to come get your guys. Heck, Georgia just won a national championship. People come got their guys. I mean, Texas came and got A.D. Mitchell. So South Carolina is going to get poached. Jaheim Bell and other good players, Marshawn Lloyd, are going to get, pillaged from these other big schools. And I think they're going to consistently be playing whack-a-mole. Auburn and Florida, I think, have a chance to be championship caliber teams. But the thing that's going to hurt them more than anything is they're going to have to play Georgia every year. And, when you combine that with, them having to play Georgia every year and then teams like LSU coming up, Alabama, being on the schedule for those teams. Think about Auburn, man. Think about, what did you do? What did you do wrong that you're going to have to play Alabama and Georgia every year? You're going to try Hugh Freeze is going to have to get up off the mat with those two standing there, like kicking him and saying, nope, you're not going to get off the mat. I mean, it's pretty wild.
Well, I mean, just when you thought and just when Auburn thought they had kind of organized things in the SEC to make things a little bit more fair, you take Georgia off of the week right before the Iron Bowl. You move them up in the schedule. You don't have to play Georgia in the same year as Alabama on the road and at home. You've negotiated all these things and got them to work out in your favor. And now you still have to play Georgia and Alabama and I guess LSU. Right? Is that what we're thinking would be Auburn's three?
I can't think that. I mean, they're not going to do that to them, are they? I mean, I can't. That's mind blowing to me. I don't know why they would do that. That would be, oh God.
I mean, who else would it be though, Jake?
For Auburn, but Ole Miss maybe, which is I guess not all that much better right now. I don't know. That's a good point, Wes.
Well, what do you know about the way they're laying things out? Because I've seen discussions about how there's a tier system, right? And you want to preserve your historic rivals, but there's also almost like an SEC basement level of teams, which if you make it on that list, congrats, you're the, I guess, the worst of the best. But who do you give to Auburn, man? Because they do have a lot to argue when it comes to, hey, we're really getting kicked in the teeth every single season.
I don't know, but it would shock me if they held on to those three games. I just can't believe they would do that to them. I think maybe you hold on to Mississippi State, maybe you hold on to somebody even closer to you. That one's a tough one for me because you're talking about playing three marquee programs. You're talking about playing the teams that have won the last four national championships all on your schedule. And
I've seen one proposal that I just pulled up. This is from of all places, Vanderbilt's SB Nation side. I guess those are the brainiacs in the conference who would actually have the time to figure this out with an Excel spreadsheet. But they've got Auburn's three permanent opponents as Alabama, Florida, and Georgia. So not LSU, but still, I mean, Florida, to your point, within the next few years with the portal, if they get their NIL situation off the mat, Florida you would think could be dangerous again in the next several seasons. So not exactly a good break for
I think they should.
Auburn.
I think they should, Wes. If they're gonna, be nice to Auburn like they did when they gave them 2 home games in a row against Georgia, and when they moved the schedule to October, moved to let Georgia be scheduled in October or September, like it's going to be this coming year. If they're going to be nice to them, they just give them Vandy as that third permanent opponent. But this is one of the reasons, Wes, why I'm such a big fan of the 3-3-3 format. You split teams into 4 different pods. You play the 3 teams from your pod. That's the first 3. Then you play 1 common opponent from the other 3 pods, and that gives you 6 built-in opponents a year. And then you have a 3-game rotation with the other, with the other 9 teams in the conference that you could play. And then you get 3 one year, 3 the next year, 3 the next year. And every 3 years, I mean, everything's running on 3s. I don't know how many more times I can say 3 now. But every 3 years, you're playing everybody in the SEC. And, every 6 years, you're playing everybody in the SEC, both home and away, at least once. So much better than the scheduling model we have now. And I think it also helps preserve things like Georgia, Tennessee, things like Auburn, LSU. I think it makes it easier for those teams a little further west, for Texas to play, A&M, Arkansas, and Oklahoma, because I think that's very important for, is this thing going to work? And it's going to work because it's going to make a crap load of money. But who do you want to see, Wes? You always get asked me a bunch of questions, and I just sit here and take them and blabber. Who do you want to see come to Athens first, Texas or Oklahoma?
I want to see Texas first. I think Georgia's got somewhat of revenge on the brain, if you can even call it that, from a Sugar Bowl that not making excuses. I mean, you covered the game too. Georgia really didn't field its most complete team since then. And ever since that game, that Sugar Bowl, seems like Kirby Smart's done something internally to get players who could opt out to actually be interested in these New Year's Six games.
Well, I think one of the changes they made, that was when the whole Justin Fields thing was going down.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Georgia bent over backwards to say, hey, we want everybody involved. All of you guys that opted out or didn't want to be here, or, like DeAndre Baker and Justin Fields, who they knew wasn't going to play and was trying to transfer. They were just trying to hope maybe he fell in love with the experience and decided to stay. I don't know. The next year, Georgia had the same thing, probably more opt-outs and more guys missing against Baylor. They just didn't bring them. They didn't focus on them. They said, all right, guys, if you want to move on, that's great. We love you. We support you, but move on. And I think that really helped, for that game. But you're right. I mean, Texas fans still try to talk a little trash about that. Even after Georgia's won 2 national championships, they think –
hey, they still got the bragging rights.
Yeah, they think getting A.D. Mitchell and winning a Sugar Bowl is big time. And listen, for them right now it is, because they haven't – Texas is not back, and it may not be back. And I wonder if Steve Sarkisian is going to be the head coach when this all goes down.
Yeah, I think there's a lot going on between Georgia and Texas, and you mentioned one of the other things, and the other one is Arch Manning, and he was a Georgia recruit. It was down to Georgia and Texas, according to all the reports that we heard. So I don't know if first means within the next 3 seasons necessarily. I'm not doing the math that quickly, but if Texas comes to Athens before Oklahoma, I think you could have a lot more interesting storylines and a lot more opportunity for Georgia to plant the flag in that brand and say, hey, welcome to our conference, but this is still our conference.
Yeah, 100%. I definitely look at it that way too. And this is going to be a lot of fun to talk about and to discuss. I'm sure we'll get into it tomorrow night on the Georgia show a little bit, and maybe get some clips from this on there or something. But I'm really excited about it. And, we were talking to Ross Dellinger about it last night, and, they're coming in 2024. That he broke that news on Bark After Dark last night. Or no, he didn't break the news on Bark After Dark. He talked about it, but he broke the news, Ross did, that yes, this is happening in 2024. There was some posturing going on there. There was some intentionally leaked information, according to him. I had heard the same thing, and I presented it to him in that way when I asked him the question. But, there's been a lot of back and forth on this. Everybody's ready to make a lot of money. And, while we're kind of in that, as Ross described, a purgatory between amateurism and professionalism, having this happen to usher us into probably a new era of college football, I think is big. Adding those two marquee names. And like I said, everybody's going to make a lot of money. Hopefully us too. We're running a business too, Wes.
Well, how about Georgia in all the SEC teams? You mentioned the purgatory. There's that 1 year before the playoff expands where this is the league. So you're going to have 3 seasons in a row with, really different landscapes of the conference and of college football. So that's just the way things go. And I think that's how they like to have it. Every season has its own storylines and is engaging and entertaining for its own reasons. And that is how you run a business, Jake. Y'all hit subscribe, hit like on this video. You tell us in the comments, who do you want to see Georgia play first in Sanford Stadium, Texas or Oklahoma? Think about that. We'll see you on the Georgia Show, and tune in to Bark After Dark every Monday night at 9 p.m. as well. The Georgia Show every Sunday and Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Thanks, Jake.
All right, bud.